So everything that's recorded is going up on that YouTube channel. So if you miss it, you can see it. At this point in time, it's available to everybody. At a certain point in time, we're going to make it available just for members. But we're trying to build up this membership. So we're actually really excited about that because the webinar thing has worked out really well. I think we missed recording a few and we didn't get them up there. But once we figured out that whole YouTube thing, that became an obvious resource to use for the organization. So that's that. Third announcement is we have not been the most efficient at the whole membership thing. And so what we're going to do in the future is we're going to set, I'll talk to the board next week. We have a board meeting. We're going to set an annual membership date where basically a bill will go to everybody. You can pay online. It's set up that way. Because we need a little bit of money to keep certain things going, like YouTube and whatnot, and the website. And then we will prorate it. If you say we stay, it's June 1, then we'll prorate it if you join in January or something like that. We'll figure it out. So those are the basic things. The other thing is, so the goals I have for today are any kind of goals. I'd love to hear from you guys in terms of what sort of support and information you need to help your business get cleaner, greener, and to grow. Those are the things we're really trying to support at NOHBA. For those of you who don't know, NOHBA stands for Natural and Organic Health and Beauty Alliance. Since we chose that name a number of years ago, the whole concept of green and clean has evolved. It didn't used to be here. Those are new words. So those kind of came under the umbrella of NOHBA. And at our last board meeting, the big focus we really talked about and feel that we need, and this is the first subject I'd love input and discussion on, is that every single retailer has a different standard. They either do or do not have well-defined meanings for the words they use around products and standards. And we would like to facilitate a series of public conversations on Zoom, kind of laying down some of the landscape that has, that like, what is organic and how do you use that term? What is natural? Are there regulatory references? What do we mean by clean? What do we mean by green? What do we mean when we say a standard? Because I have been on a number of retailer sites who say they have a standard, but there's nothing written, which makes it really difficult to know what they exactly want. So what we want to do is try to get some public conversation about that so that we can have a little more continuity. I think that's very valuable for consumers. Consumers are really confused. I talked to a young woman yesterday who's getting an MBA focusing on sustainable cosmetics at Wharton. And she's writing a paper or something. And she kept saying over and over again, and she worked for Estee Lauder, and first she worked for McKinsey as a consultant, then she worked for Estee Lauder. She's done a lot of stuff within the cosmetic realm over about the last 6 years, and now she's back in grad school. But she kept saying over and over again that consumers are confused. They don't know what some of the terms mean. They don't know how to trust a company. And I think that it would help all of us if consumers have greater clarity about the focus of these newer brands that are using these broader terms. Okay, so now I'm going to open it up. I would love to hear what anybody else has to say about that. Actually, a couple of you are retailers on here, so I'd be very interested to hear what you have to say about that. And hi. And yes, Teresa, packaging is the toughest part. We'll talk about packaging. That's a whole separate category. But right now, I think does anybody have any ideas or any contacts where if we facilitate maybe a 2-hour webinar kind of conference, or maybe an hour and a half, 2 or 3 different days over a month and a half? What would that look like to you? What would benefit you? How do you see getting people to come to the table and talk about these issues? And who would you like to hear from? You bunch of blabbermouths, come on.
Well, it's Therese. Here, I'll turn my video on. Sometimes it's shaky. I'm actually, hi, I have my own small business, and then I consult on the side as a branding creative person. And I'm actually working with a celeb brand in progress right now who started with sort of these standards from Sephora, and then now are moving to Ulta, but now want to know what credos are. And it's created so much back work. We've gotten to a certain point, and now we've got to go backwards and change messaging, make a certain person a thought leader that she's clearly not, you know, things like that. So I think just the word standardizing. I know so many marketers who just want to know what to do. Is the best case scenario credo standards? That's kind of where in my world, where everyone's sort of trying to work toward is the credo standard. And even investors, when I talk to them, they're like, oh, you know, you're in credo, that's good. They're setting the standard. So that's kind of where the marketing's going, I think, in terms of how credo's marketing their standards. So just being able to have a seminar on, like, I don't know if it's a seminar or if it's like working behind the scenes with these retailers and these, you know, NOHBAs and EWGs. Why can't we have a standard? Why is it taking this long?
It's because we're not talking to each other, I think, number one. So that's my first goal, is to try and get these people to the table. And I think if we even just got, like, Credo will participate, that's no problem. You know, Mia used to be on our board, and I'm sure she'll participate. And I think one of the big things is that that when you write people don't understand even what the word standard means. So, you know, you said your client was working with Ulta. Ulta talks about their pillars, but they don't have a written standard. I don't know what the hell those pillars are. I don't know what they mean. I don't know what they want them to mean. I think it sounded good, kind of in a big swishy way, but there was no clarity there. And I'm probably at the far end of the extreme, because I've been writing standards since 1991. I know a lot about standards, and I'll be happy. And actually, Eric and I were just talking about having just a webinar, which I could do in a half an hour, and explain what is a good standard? What questions should you ask? And how do you what do you look for to identify that something is a standard? So, you know, we'll put that on the list, and we can do that as one of our regular webinars that, you know, can go up on YouTube. That's quick. But then I think it's like getting those people to the table and pushing back. And it sounds like you have a little bit of an opportunity to do that, Therese.
Yeah, I mean, in some ways, it's definitely a marketing move for some of these retailers. And I think because now Credo brands are in Ulta, it makes me in particular think, okay, then those are the standards they're going to eventually adapt to. But these big guys, yeah, right, they're never going to pay that much cost of good. And it's just a whole trail.
Yeah, and we don't really want Ulta to be Credo. It's a whole different market. So I don't know. But I think, you know, we can definitely, do you have some contacts where we could, you know, if we set this up, you could invite somebody for us? Okay. Yeah, you're on the list now. We're going to be reaching out to you. Yes. And then, Erica, the text you just sent me, yes. Go right ahead if you want to. That's fine. And I wonder, Simon, you've been working with a lot of people who are looking at standards. Do you have any kind of overarching observations about this?
Yes, I've been looking at a lot of standards, and I think I would concur that Credo seems to kind of be the gold standard. And it is the retailers that are setting the pace. So I think to try and get people on the same page, it's maybe focus on retailers.
What about because you've been working with some of the people who do statistics, right? They gather market data.
Yeah.
How do they react? What are they looking for?
Well, I think they're looking for someone that's going to be holding up a standard that that everybody can be on the same page for. I think their perspective is the same as retailers.
Would they be
put
willing
the
to come,
retailer's shoes on?
Would they be willing to come to the table? Do you think, would somebody at one of those organizations come and
Definitely.
And say,
oh, definitely.
we need better clarity?
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, I was working on a market research report for one of the major intelligence providers, and at the end of it, we were exasperated because it was confusing. In short,
yeah.
Yeah, when Credo was good, but it still wasn't there. There were still holes in the Credo standards as well. So yeah.
Okay, and then I just saw a note from Larry saying, "Can you hear me?" We can't at this point. Larry? You want to chime in? We may have lost him. No, he's here. Larry. Oh, so I don't know.
Larry's muted.
Oh, well, okay. There you go. No, you went on. Now you're unmuted, Larry. Try again and turn up your volume. That's the other thing. Sometimes you have to turn the volume on your computer up or your phone.
How about this? Does that work?
There you are. Hi.
Something to do with AirPods. I'm a bit of a newcomer here. I don't know if you guys know me, but we're having the same issue in the microbiome area, where what's happening is standards, and it's not a standard if everyone has their own.
No.
And what I think of us as sort of stewards of a movement. And if we're going to give information to the public, the consumer, so that they can make better decisions, if we cannot agree on what the words mean or what the language mean, what we will do is we will create confusion in the marketplace.
We already
and I think the issue is structural. So if in order to participate in a standard, I essentially have to join a club and there's a financial investment and there's a bunch of other things, then it's not actually inclusive enough. It doesn't allow for essentially everyone who wants to participate to necessarily participate. But it starts with here is a set of principles that we can all agree upon. Because here's the problem that I have in my field, in the microbiome with standards, which is we're still learning a lot. So the standard has to be dynamic enough to accept the fact that we all have imperfect information, and we're in the process of learning and expanding that information. And so if I may propose something that we're doing as what I would call a noble experiment, and I don't know how it's going to work out in the microbiome, which is we establish a set of principles for behavior, things we can all agree upon, as such things as we will engage in civil discourse, that anyone who is a stakeholder has a voice, and that we are willing to actually open up the discussion to views that we may not necessarily accept to see if we might learn something from this. These are things that's hard to actually disagree with. Principles need to be something that we as a group can all say, yeah, that's all reasonable human behavior given this. And from that evolves the set of standards. So for example, what we're doing in the microbiome, and this may or may not apply here, is we're having issues around some very basic terms like prebiotic, probiotic, postbiotic, etc. and there's a discussion within the scientific community, but there's largely an agreement on that. And the way these ideas project out into the public so the public can make intelligent decisions is the place where the problem has arisen. So if one wishes to belong to this community of scholars and stakeholders who see themselves as stewards of something that they believe is important, all they have to do is agree to abide by the principles. And if they do so, there's no money, there's no transaction other than an agreement to abide by a set of principles. And as long as you do that, you get to use the logo, you get to carry the standard in that sort of sense. And if for some reason you decide you want to do it differently, you can leave and you can always come back if you wish to do it. And so it becomes inclusive. And the idea is this is a forum of people who are interested in preserving the integrity of a community which serves a meaningful higher purpose. And from that emerges the standards. The problem we have right now is these types of standards are held by businesses, and businesses serve incomes as well as outcomes. That creates a set of incentives that are somewhat different. Now, I don't know if this is going to work, but as I see this, and with our company, we are wrestling with the idea of what is the standards that are going to apply to the kinds of things that we're doing. And I'm an outlier, so I'm always doing stuff that hasn't been done before. And as a result, the standards don't exactly fit, but I believe in principle with them. And so this is kind of a long-winded way of saying that there's a structural issue that we are dealing with here, which is even if, and I do believe, by the way, that Credo is doing a very good job with this, it's still their standard. It's not so much a community standard. And exactly how you square that circle so it works for everybody is something that I see as an experiment because I don't have an answer to it. But as members of a community who all care about a lot of things in common, if we make an effort to try to have something where if you wish to be a stakeholder and your voice is allowed to be heard and you come up with, say, this is what the standard looks like today, but I have an alternative view on this and I'd like to have that conversation. That can happen. That allows standards to evolve with more, as more and more information comes in. And with that, I'm going to shut up. You can mute me again.
Thanks, Larry. That was helpful. I agree with you on everything you said, and I can see ready solutions to certain barriers you've identified, like the whole thing of there being what I wrote down was club problem. Yeah, we need to have members who have access to certain things because we need to support our little organization, and it's all volunteer as it is. And we're not actually proposing that we write a standard. I think what our board has agreed upon so far, but this is kind of up to members, is that we want to push people who say they have a standard to do the kinds of things you're talking about, to create clarity, to create a dynamic standard, to have, to facilitate some kind of input. What we did, for example, I worked on the ANSI 305 standard, which is also known as the NSF 305. And that is a standard setting board that sort of it's the pre-step before legislation. So it has to be available to the public. Now you have to have named people on the committee, but then anybody can participate. Anybody can have a voice. And given Zoom, that's pretty damn easy now. So we can facilitate participation, I think, as we come up with whatever we come up with. But I guess, right now we are not talking about having a NOHBA standard per se. We're talking about pushing retailers to have a clarity of standard. And I think really to establish the principles you're talking about. And one thing NOHBA could do is, the very last thing you said is that we can agree on what we care about in common. And I think that is something that as an organization, if we use that as a sort of a goal, we can establish the principles that underlie what we care about. And then those principles, once identified, can be used as tools because retailers don't know how to write standards. Like the Credo standard is the most evolved of the standards that are out there for clean and green, but they don't really have principles stated. You know, they don't say, they don't have sort of they use words that they don't define. And if you don't define the words that you're using that are your principal goals, they'd have no meaning. So if you talk about something being safe and you don't specify topical safety, environmental safety, you know, safety to the environment, like I look at things like what happens when you process something. That's a particular environment. What happens when you put it on your skin? That's another environment. What happens when you grow the plant that you're going to make this thing from? So those are all things that we kind of have to coordinate and think about and identify. So I think we have some really big issues to deal with in terms of just defining some of these terms. Because, I mean, yesterday I had a call with somebody who she's in Credo, and then she found out that she had an ingredient that she did not want. And she was unaware because she's dealing with chemists and they're not fully transparent about what these ingredients are. So how do we give people the tools to ask the right questions? Hello, hello. Somebody else chime in.
I was wondering, since we have Katie here, I know Katie, don't you do a lot with Credo? Do you have anything, to say about this? No.
She may, I don't know. She's not muted, but she may not be in front of her computer right now.
Okay.
If I could chime in here from my experience writing the report for the market intelligence provider, I found that the big hole in the standards set by the retailers was the environmental aspect, the impact of the ingredients, formulations, etc. Yeah, that seemed to be the big hole in the whole thing.
Yeah, I agree. When I did one presentation, and I think it's up on YouTube, where I compared all. I have a chart. And I compare all of the different standards, and the only standards that address environmental impact are the organic and natural standards, Cosmos and NOHBA, and NSF. Actually, yes, NSF does, although they don't do it explicitly, while Cosmos does. So I found it pretty hilarious that the EWG, the Environmental Working Group standard, does not include assessments of environmental impact, which I think is a problem, personally. So.
This is Sharon. Hi.
Hi.
I heard two things, because we need to provide them tools to ask the right questions, and then we also need to guide along what the right standards, the best standards are. Interesting, I didn't realize they don't include environmental consideration. But I noted in 2015, 16, 17, I noticed the shift was to the retailers as the experts in this world rather than the brands anymore. And I feel like that is because every brand had their own standard. Every brand had their own, we're green, we're green, we're green, we're green. So the public gets tired of that. So we've moved now to the retailers, and that's happening there too. So who's even talking about Beauty Counter anymore? I mean, they were the leaders of it a couple of years ago. I'm disrespect. I'm just like, that's what's going on. And Filane and Credo are the ones. But I know in my experience too, I think they do a good job, but they had a lot to learn in considering every bit of the chain for what really truly is.
Yeah, they don't know how. It's hard. It's really, really complicated.
Exactly. So I was saying all that in a lead up to, I know you had involvement back in the day when the NOP started on the food side. Is there some correlation that we could do? In fact, I always wanted to tell USDA, like, all the work you did on the food, you're just muddying it here by letting this happen on the personal care side. Not that we want them to lead this, but I don't know if there's some precedent or some path we could follow along that way and what happened on the food side.
Yeah, there's a blog that I wrote. I can send the list out to everybody here. Did you see the one I sent to the board? It has a very short paragraph that says, here's a model of how you create this kind of a standard. And because the NOP was exactly that. It took 12 years, 30 years in all, but it took 12 years to actually write it as a regulation. And it was written as a private standards for 12 years before it became a regulation. And there were 46 different standards initially, and slowly but surely they harmonized. And I suspect that's exactly what will happen here. I don't, I have no doubt that my children and kids their age will push it in that direction. Personally, I don't want to wait that long. Because I know that didn't happen until I was 40 and I didn't really understand what the hell I was doing, probably 45, I guess. And now it's just we have a greater need to do it faster. And this has a great deal to do with climate change. Larry, are you in a light show?
No, I'm having a problem with a light here because it's the sensor to turn it on and off is controlled by heat, and I'm heating something. I'm here in the lab today. I'm going to come back to something that I've noticed before and I was commenting on. The problem is standards are like opinions. Everyone's got one and everybody else's stinks. I actually cleaned that up for the crowd because I don't know you that well, but I'd be more than happy to put it back in its original form. And if I have a company, my marketing people want me to tell my consumers that my standard's better than everybody else's standard. Okay, and that's kind of your job if you have a company. And the problem is we haven't become a community that is concerned about harmonizing all of these things. So yeah, Beauty Counter, Credo, all of these things have good parts of these things, and the other part is they're somewhat exclusive. I think that until we figure out a way, and again, I sent it to you, Gay, but you're happy to send it out to the rest of the group. This is the first stab at a set of principles. They called it a manifesto. I really do not like that word at all. And today I definitely don't like that word. It's a set of principles for decent human behavior, for a community of scholars and humanists who are concerned about the broader impact of their activities. And I'm quite sure that what I've just said there applies to everyone here. So when we talk about, how it has happened before and what this particular, safety or environmental, all of these things are complicated, that if we don't have a common community, what happens is everyone does their very best job, they develop their own, and then because of the economics of whoever writes the checks to put groceries on their table, it becomes theirs. And that, again, I'm seeing this in my field, and I have to look back at the things that we have done and ask the question, how do we do this better? Because until we become a community that is concerned about the common good, you see, we can be concerned about the common good and still build a successful company. And I know that's total heresy, but I believe it's possible. I have to believe it's possible. I'm a pathologically optimistic cynic living in a light show gun. I can't seem to do anything about that right now. I'm going to unplug it. How about that? Okay. So, if we can figure out that piece, then we can start addressing each of these individual issues. The issue of, the complexity of dealing with the environmental impact of our decisions, because none of these are simple. My first law is that everything's more complicated than we think that it is. And by the way, the second law is whenever you open a can of worms, you better have a bigger one nearby to put it away. And that's what we're talking about doing here with it. But it's important. And, you know, and those of us who are in the industry really we have only one of two choices. We can participate or we can ignore this. And God knows there's enough people who are ignoring it. And a lot of the ones who are participating in it are only doing it because it's marketing. If I get a couple of these certifications on my website, it'll help me sell more shit.
Yeah.
Okay, that is not the problem I'm trying to solve. We do have to, you know, change that is not driven by a sustainable economic engine. We have a name for that. We call it government. Okay, I'm not engaged in that. And I don't think any of us want this type of activity to be overseen by government. And I'm not someone who doesn't believe in regulation. I know what things look like if we don't regulate them. And what I do believe is in a dynamic field like this where things are evolving and we keep learning new stuff, the problem with government types of regulation is it's stuck in concrete. And when you learn something new, no one is willing to spend the time or the money to evolve the ideas. And you end up with, you're solving yesterday's problems and ignoring tomorrow's. And I think that we can do better. You know, look, you know, I'm here because I believe in you guys. I believe if Gay started this, she did, then I believe in this firmly that this is a force for good. And I who have, like all the rest of you, absolutely no time to spare, will find time to make this work because I think it's really important.
Larry, I love you so much right now. Thank you. That was really kind of you.
So yeah, look, that's why I'm here, and that's why I'm. And again, go ahead and circulate it. By the way, it comes under the heading of a shitty first draft.
Did you
did
you send it to my OO address? Where'd you send it to?
I put it in the chat here. I'm becoming I'm becoming a Zoom ninja.
Okay.
And if you want,
Oh, there it is.
Look, I can probably send it to everybody too. Let me see if I have that.
I got it. I got it.
Okay. Just so you know, it's really a shitty first draft, but it opens up the idea of how do you if you form a community around a set of shared principles and beliefs, and we engage in civil discourse, I believe that is a sustainable tool for change. That is the hypothesis behind doing this. I don't know, it might work. As far as I can tell, it hasn't been tried before.
Right. I opened it, so I'll take a look at it and take off anything that needs to be taken off in terms of identifying people or places. I mean, if it's wide open, then that's fine.
It's wide open. This
Okay.
is, you know, there's nothing proprietary about any of this. This is,
Great.
by the way, if any of you want to participate, let me know. The one thing that's in there is Kisako, which they hold conferences, has agreed to pro bono host the community. And so that's their name. Their name is in there, but it's not proprietary. Anyone who thinks it's important, at least in the microbiome, to be doing what we're doing, you're invited. And I'm not promoting it. I'm just, you know, saying it's not exclusive. I am promoting it. Of course I am.
Thank you. Okay, well, it's 12:37, and I am wondering if anybody else has anything to add to this. I think I need to go back to the board with some of this stuff. And we've got a couple board members on today, so thank you for being here. That helps when we all get together next week. And maybe we can kind of come together with a basic proposal, but I still want to try and I want to figure out a way to get these retailers at the table. If you look at the history of how the organic thing went, I went to the Expo West for many, many years, like starting in 1992 or 91, I can't remember, 30 years ago. So the first time I went, there was like 3 organic booths, and they were all, like once spread out all over. And then the next year I went, there were maybe 6 organic booths, and they were together. They got a little organic section. And then the next year, then there was an organic row. And then the people who ran the organization, who ran the company New Hope said, oh, if you want to be in the organic section, you have to give us a document of some kind telling us why you're organic, either, I don't know, because there weren't that many standards then. So it kept ratcheting up year after year after year, so that by the late 90s, you had to be certified to some standard, any standard, to be in that organic grow. Now, certification is much more complex for cosmetics than it is for food, to a certain extent, in some ways. Other ways, it's not. It certainly is with a Cosmo standard, but that's more the inspection agency than the standard itself. The standard's pretty good. But I think the concept of being able to clarify without certification what an individual brand means is what I'm still kind of aiming at. Because every single time I have a conversation with somebody and I explain to them a particular principle around sustainable that they hadn't encountered before, basically they're thankful, they're glad that they understand it, because there is a history. There are models, there are ways to solve all of these problems, but we have to show up and do it. And very much as Larry just said. So I think we'll talk about that next week. I wanted to, I think I kind of want to move on to another.
Can
Yeah.
Just, do you want us to, I know I'm like, first, Happy New Year. Hi, everybody. I know I'm very ignorant on this subject, but it sounds like in order to get these retailers to the table, like, can we as members put a little pressure on them by emailing them? Is there, like, if we have the contacts, would that be helpful?
Yes, of course.
So, like, I mean, is there a way that we can send out an email to all the members saying, here are the people that we want you to contact, and here's, like, something that we want to say, so that we're able, and maybe we don't get like Ulta at the table, but maybe we get Onda and Credo. Like, we need at least like a couple of retailers, right?
That's how it starts to build, Ellen. I don't think we want to inundate people. I don't think we need to inundate people. I think what we need to do is we need to have a clear structure and a clear goal for each event, so that people feel that their time is being useful and that they will benefit from participating. And when you give that to, I mean, there's a reason you guys all signed up to come today. You felt that there was going to be some benefit, right? So we need to provide a benefit that's quite concrete for people to show up. But I think the overarching goal is getting rid of consumer confusion, period. End of story. I just don't think there's any bigger issue that's hurting the brand.
Hey, I can't look behind the couch because the train is there.
Hey, you're on. So does that make sense to you?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. And wait, Ellen, weren't you opening a retail?
You asked me to come on.
Yeah, we actually just started construction in November, and we're projected to open in spring or summer. So
okay, great.
No.
All right, good. But then you're gonna be looking for these principles, so it's easier for you to communicate with your potential brands.
Yeah, I think that clarity and transparency is huge. So yes, please.
Every time I turn around, I think there are two words for 2021, and it's transparency and sustainability.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we need to be very clear about, probably, those are such big words that it's going to take a long time to really be clear about that. My favorite thing was Amazon said that they were being completely transparent about a brand they were making. And you could click on the ingredient, and the ingredient showed that the water came from a factory, which means it was going through a Siemens, like in any cosmetic factory, they have water purification systems. So it had the address of the contract manufacturer where the water came from for the Amazon product. And I was just in hysterics when I saw that, because that is not transparency. That is not what we meant. What we meant was, how did the palm oil get here, and where did it come from, and how did it affect the people who grew it or were no longer allowed to grow it?
Have you seen this? That the House and Senate are in lockdown, and police said that those outside should seek cover
Trump is calling on his
Oh, wow.
uprising in his tweets now. He's saying, stay peaceful. All these people stormed the Capitol.
Oh my God. Yeah, I knew that they did that. We announced that at the beginning that the US is under siege. I was watching NPR, seems to have the best camera coverage, and they were calling people. So I want to move on because I think we have a lot of stuff to work with now. And Eric and I will kind of try to put it in some kind of form and get back to you all. Actually, that's kind of, I just am looking for more requests for information you guys want on webinars. We could have Larry do one on microbiome because I think that would be helpful. Would you do that? Would you give us a half an hour? Okay.
Absolutely.
And what are you guys needing? I know packaging came up. And I think that's a rough one. And, believe me, we're always working on packaging. So we will continue to look for people who can help us address that issue. But is there any other kinds of specific, if you haven't attended them, so far what we've had is the lady who runs the vegan certification program spoke and explained how her program worked. The people who run the NSF 305 at Oregon Tilth spoke. We've seen the recycling lady from the Twin Cities is fantastic. And I really learned so much about what really can and cannot be recycled. That was a very helpful program. I will talk about how standards are written and how definitions are arrived at in committee sorts of approaches. I can do a little webinar on that. We'll add Larry with microbiome. We've got Nadim, I think, is it next week, Erica? Or week after? Oh, I think it's like the 21st. Nadim, who spoke at our conference and he's fantastically informed. He is on the FDA committee that is working on petitioning for new sunscreen ingredients and getting rid of the old bad ones. And he's very knowledgeable about that. And he's a PhD. He's a bright guy, kind of a smart guy, and has been doing consulting for many years, and also produces and owns some essential oil distillation facilities. So he's interested in many things, but he's going to talk about how you do validation testing and what you need to know about sunscreens to make sure that they're legal, that you're not going to get busted by FDA. So we will have that, I think, on the 21st. So what else do you guys need? And if you can't think of it now, you can email me and tell me, and or Erica, either one of us. Erica is just erica@ooorganic.com and gay@ooorganic.com. So, and she's an Erica with,
I'm at sales.
Sales. She's at sales. I was going to say Erica with a K, but it's sales with an L.
Yeah, that's how you spell my name. Yes.
Yeah. So, because if that's it, then I'm going to let everybody get back to commerce. And I'm going to turn on Twitter and NPR and see what's going on. I have to see if I can. I don't think I get NPR on my Apple TV thing. I don't know. Okay. Anybody have anything to add other than that? Happy New Year. Okie doke. Well, then we're going to sign off. And I thank you all again for showing up. And we will see what happens over the next year. We'll try and get a few things organized that can kind of address some of these big issues. And we will probably also send out a note asking for like committee members so we can get a thing moving. Because I need somebody else to be like a committee head and push So setting a, let me define what being a committee member or committee head requires. You have to actually send invitations and schedule a meeting. You have to create an agenda for the meeting. The agenda should be succinct enough that you can accomplish your goals, like 1, 2, or 3 things, no more. And you can never give people more work than what you would be willing to do, and probably should give them a little less. This is a volunteer organization. It's crucial to be sensitive to the amount of time people have to contribute. So that's how you keep people involved. So thank you. Happy New Year.